welcome to In the Margins. I'm your host, Ralph Newell. We are doing a series on the Examples of Excelencia for 2024. For those of you in the audience not familiar with the Examples of Excelencia, it is the only national data-driven effort to recognize programs at the associate, baccalaureate, and graduate levels, as well as community-based organizations with evidence of effectiveness in accelerating Latino student success. For 2024, 103 programs were nominated from 20 different states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico for incorporating intentional and culturally relevant evidence-based practices that positively impact Latino students. For the associate level, Reading Area Community College was recognized as the 2024 Example of Excelencia for the English for Academic Purpose, EAP program for short. And with us today, we have Eleisha Moreno, the coordinator of the EAP program, Academic Literacy and Language Center, and Crystal Schilthuis, the associate professor in the EAP program. Congratulations to you all and welcome to you both.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I was mentioning to you guys earlier, at Diverse, we like to highlight and share with our audience the best practices, and the EAP program is obviously one of those examples. So let's start with you, Eleisha. I think, the foundation, I think for your program, I think people have to understand where you guys are. And I mean that demographically, location-wise, et cetera. Reading Community College is HSI. So you guys do serve a high number of Latino students. What I know about Reading, what I remember, I remember as a child, I used to go with my mother on bus trips to Reading to go shopping at the outlets.
Right.
I don't even know if that's still a thing. I know she was very big on tax-free. And my father used to always say, I don't know why you pay all that money to go up there. All the money you paid to go and to eat, you've lost in taxes on the stuff that you buy. But those are just good bonding trips. I remember that about Reading. I always think about the Reading Railroad and Monopoly. And ironically, I just heard this the other day, that Taylor Swift is from Reading. So
yeah,
that's kind of cool. So Eleisha, tell us more about Reading and what we don't know.
Sure. So in Reading, over 60% of the population is now Hispanic or Latino. Over 50% of the population in Reading speaks a language other than English at home. So that just gives you a sense of the population that we are serving here in the city, and especially the students who are then coming into our program needing supports for their English language learning. Okay. Here at the college, at our HSI, I believe it's 40 or somewhere over 40% of our student population is Hispanic Latino.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking at some documentation earlier today of the population shift. There was just I guess a major, in the last 20 years, I would say, white flight, if you will, from Reading. I look at the Latino population just skyrocketed in the past 20, 30 years. What is that attributed to? Crystal, do you know?
And I'm not an expert on this, but Reading is definitely a city that had its heyday, turn of the century with the railroad and with manufacturing. And then those industries left. And I think what happened then is the price of housing went down. And so I think that with those low housing opportunities and Reading's proximity to New York City, it became this kind of secondary stop on kind of an immigrant path. So I have a lot of students who went to New York first, but it was too expensive to live. And so then they look at these surrounding cities within a few hours, and Reading is one of those. Cheap housing, and then this community developed, of course, of Dominican immigrants, Puerto Rican immigrants, Haitian immigrants. And I think it has grown from then because now people really feel at home when they come to Reading.
Okay. And, for the two of you, you both can answer. What was your calling? How did you get into, A, working in community colleges, and then B, making this part of your passion, your work, and working with bilingual students?
Go ahead,
Well,
Alicia.
it's a similar story for both of us in some ways. I won't speak for Crystal, but I initially never wanted to teach.
Okay.
I was an English major, and everybody always asked what I would do with an English degree. And I said, I don't know, but I'm not going to teach.
Okay.
But I was a student here at RACC myself. I got my associate degree here. And so I had some connections. And when I graduated with my bachelor's degree and needed a job, I thought, well, let me start tutoring. So I came back, applied for a job here, didn't get that tutoring job, but an old professor of mine said, we need adjunct instructors to teach English. So, why don't you try teaching? And at that point, I just needed work. And the first day in the classroom, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I avoided this for so long. I absolutely found my passion. And then it was about a year and a half, 2 years into teaching here that I was pegged to teach an ESL class because I had some experience tutoring ESL students in my undergrad. And then once I got into teaching the ESL classes, I knew, okay, this is definitely what I want to do forever. So when I pursued my master's degree, I did a TESOL specialization, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else now.
Good, good. Crystal, yourself?
Yeah, I was pretty unguided in my undergrad, getting my English degree, not really knowing what would come of it. Also thinking, oh, I can do other things besides teach. And then after I graduated, I saw an opportunity to teach overseas in an English teaching program. So I went to the Czech Republic for a year and taught high school there in one of their college prep schools. And in my training for that opportunity, it was the first time that somebody ever told me, wow, you're a natural at something. And so I just took to teaching very easily. And that year, when I got to the end of that year in Europe, I realized that so many things I would go back and improve and change. And to me, that was a big signal that this was what I was meant to do with my life. If I was constantly waking up and thinking how to do it better, that was a good sign that it was something I needed to continue doing. So I came back and I knew to teach at the college level, which was my preference. I had to get my master's. So I did that here at a local state university. And through that experience and through the experience I had overseas, I came to RACC, started adjuncting, and like Eleisha, was kind of approached about the ESL class because of my experience. And same thing, it was no looking back after I started. The students were just so motivated. It was so fulfilling to learn from them. And it's been since 2011 since I've been doing that. So, yeah.
Okay. And I know I won't do it justice. So, Eleisha, can you sort of set the stage? What precipitated the start of the EAP program? Were you guys one of the original folks? But what was going on that this need was created?
So we both started teaching at RACC in 2011, but got involved in at the time it was the ESL program in Crystal, you were 2012 and I was 2013. So prior to that, RACC did have a credit ESL program dating back to the 90s.
Okay.
But it was rather problematic. The students spent too much time in the program. The course sequence was very lengthy. There were a lot of credits that the students had to complete in order to get out of the sequence and go into English composition. There were required lab hours, and if students did not complete the required lab hours, they didn't pass their classes. The lab hours were completed just on a computer program, sitting in a computer lab with signs all over the walls that said English only. It was, not a welcoming atmosphere. The program did not have a very good reputation, even on campus. Advisors would say to students, go into regular developmental reading and writing. It's shorter. You'll get out faster. Like, you have a chance if you start there. So the ESL program was hemorrhaging students, didn't have a strong reputation, and students were not successful. They were not completing their classes, let alone their degrees. So in 2012, my predecessor came in and ripped down the English only signs off of the walls and shortened the sequence. And since then, since Crystal and I became full-timers and I started in my leadership role, we have further reduced our course sequence. So students now spend a maximum of 3 semesters in our program. That's if they're starting at the first level. They are not spending their financial aid on as many credits, and they're finishing the sequence. And not only that, but they are going into their general education classes, being successful, and they're graduating. So, it was a long process. In our current iteration, it's been 12 years, but now we're kind of at the peak, and excited to see where things go from here.
Okay. So this is a data-driven award. So pre-2012, what was the Latino graduation and retention rates compared to where you are today?
That's an excellent question. So we actually don't have that data.
Okay.
That was not our control group, because it has actually been so long. It's been 12 years, but we have seen an increase in our numbers actually just since 5 years ago, when we were also recognized as a finalist for Examples of Excelencia. So I could pull up those numbers. I don't have them in front of me at the moment to have the comparison. But just in the last 5 years, we have seen an increase in retention, in student course success, in course success in English composition after they've completed our EAP classes.
Okay. So what specific skills, Crystal, does the EAP program focus on with the students?
Sure. So we do courses in reading, courses in writing, and then courses in speaking and listening.
Okay.
And the reading and the writing ones are the ones that we require for students. What's kind of unique about our program is they can kind of mix and match levels, because we have seen that a student can be high in reading, but a little bit lower in their writing skills, or vice versa. So they can take a lower level reading with a higher level writing, or, on the counterpart of that. And then speaking and listening, we offer as kind of an elective credit, 2 levels of that, if they would like more confidence with pronunciation, with learning how to actively participate in classroom discussions, and getting them comfortable to go into their required general education speech class that they'll have to do eventually. I specialize in the writing classes. Eleisha specializes in reading, but also teaches some of the higher level writing. And then we have some wonderful people with special certifications teaching our speaking and listening as well.
Are there different levels in the program for the students, just based upon where they are with their English? I mean, is there like beginner, intermediate, advanced?
Yeah, so we started our lowest level with a combined reading and writing, intensive academic English. So that would be starting at our lowest level. Students who place at that level tend to be able to communicate in a basic way conversationally, but their academic skills are still fairly low. If they would happen to test lower than that class, then we do have non-credit ESL classes here at the college, and that's a separate program from ours. But that is their starting point with us in credit courses. Then we go to a middle level of writing and reading. And then there's the highest level, that's kind of our transition level, reading and writing, before they go into English composition and other 100 level classes.
Right. I don't want to make any assumptions here, but I don't even know if institutions still have this. There was a time where community colleges, in particular, some 4-year institutions, had, students that entered, but they were in remedial programs for certain things. And I don't want to call this remedial, but do the students go through this program in preparation to be able to go to the classes that they want to take, as far as they want to major in, I don't know, welding or something, but because of the language barriers, they really can't do the classes. So is this something the students start and they finish this and then they get into their regular academic work, or does it run parallel?
For the most part, students are completing our classes first.
Okay.
So our classes are considered prerequisites for
Okay.
a lot of 100 level courses. But there are some classes that students can take to fulfill electives or maybe other general education requirements while they're in our classes. But we find our students are so motivated and they really want to do their best. A lot of them will say, I really just want to focus on my English first before I advance to anything else.
Yeah.
So that's what tends to happen. Okay.
I mean, obviously, this is all about student success. So how much of the curriculum outside of your courses is designed to be, is any of it complementary to what you guys are doing? Do you have buy-in from the faculty and the academic deans with this?
So
I'll ask you.
One thing I'll add here is that when Eleisha and I revise our curriculum, we look really closely, especially at 100 level courses. We definitely did that with our highest level when we revised our competencies and our materials, looking at what kinds of assignments students will have to complete, looking at, we looked at one class where we realized they were going to have to do a 200 to 300 word discussion post weekly, so how do we get them to transition to that kind of writing task? So we have done that a lot. I would say it's a mixed bag as far as, faculty understanding how to support multilingual students. We have some that are huge proponents of our program and want our students because they know that they're well prepared. And then maybe others who just aren't as aware of the impact that we're having and maybe aren't even aware that they have a lot of these language learners in their classes. So it goes both ways.
All right, I'm going to digress for a second. It's reminding me of a conversation I just had with a caregiver for my father-in-law. She is originally from Nigeria, so English is not her first language, and she was a nurse in Nigeria, but she now needs to pass her boards here. So she's in a nursing program at a local community college here. And she asked me, her English is pretty good, but when getting into the sort of some of the nuances of language and science and stuff like that, she can't keep up. So she was asking me, is it okay for her to record in her classrooms? I said, it should be okay, but maybe you want to double check with your professor. So I'm sort of asking that sort of as a lead in here to what type of assessments do you guys do, or do you do assessments to see where the student's progress is? Do they have to come back for refreshers, maybe when they're into that second year or third year of the program? How does that work as far as assessing?
So what I'll say is, as far as assessment goes, once students are out of our program, we're not exactly assessing them. We do, for our data purposes, we are keeping track generally of how students are performing in their general education courses and in their English composition. So we're pulling that general course success data. But one of the things that really is a feature of our program is what you referenced earlier when you introduced me, the Academic Literacy and Language Center. Okay. Because what we do in that center is we have professional tutors. They are over 50% of them have some kind of TESOL credential, whether that is a master's in TESOL or a certificate. And students can come and get tutoring support for any reading, writing intensive class throughout their time here at the college. So when students do move on to those higher level classes and they realize that, the language is still a barrier, whether it's just the density of what they have to read or it's interpreting an assignment from a professor, they can come to us and we can help them to interpret those assignments or, review their writing or remind them of those study skills that we helped them build in our classes when they first started with us. So even though we're not necessarily assessing students in the same way as we do when they're in our program, we're still here to support them, to help them, get through their classes successfully. And then, of course, we are just tracking that general course success data for our population once they move on. And I do have those numbers too, if you wanted me to share any of those.
Yeah, sure. No, however you feel. Okay, so I think we have I think a very good baseline and understanding of what the program is for, how it works. Now I want to know, how do you identify the students? What type of outreach are you guys doing? I'm assuming maybe there's some community outreach, K-12 outreach. And even with that, you still have students that fall through the cracks. So I'm just, can you let us know, what type of outreach, how do you let the students and parents know about the program?
Yeah, we try to come at them from every angle, basically. Over the last year and a half or so, we actually started implementing a special campus visit with ESL programs from local high schools. And so small cohorts of students, it's usually anywhere from like 8 to 20 students from an ESL program in a local high school, usually juniors and seniors, will arrange to come visit us on a Friday morning. And they learn about the program, about the purpose of the program. We talk about how it's different from ESL in high school. And then we have them participate and actually interact in a lesson demonstration from one of our faculty members. They go on a campus tour. They have lunch, they visit the Academic Literacy and Learning Center. They get to talk with students who are currently in the program, or maybe current students who are now out of the program and into their major classes. So we have actually seen a pretty big increase in our enrollment, since we started doing these campus visits.
Okay.
But other than that, when students come in, they might identify as being bilingual on a self-report form. If they take the placement test, or if we see if a student provides a transcript and we see that they have ESL classes on their high school transcript, we will direct them to take our placement test to give us an idea of what level of our classes they should start in. But we also work closely with our faculty in our division, our Foundational Studies division, who teach the developmental reading and writing classes. And they also help us identify students that might be struggling with language a little bit in the first week or two of classes. And usually through conversation, we might say, that our classes might be a better fit for you. You might get more of this targeted support that you need. But to me, agency is really, really important. Sometimes students say, no, I don't need to be in EAP classes. They don't really identify as an ESL student. And in that case, we say, well, we have tutoring. So if you ever feel like you need some support for your classes, come see us just in tutoring. So, a lot of times students are self-identifying. Sometimes we're getting referrals, but the agency piece is really important to me. I want students to feel comfortable. And unfortunately, sometimes there's a stigma attached to ESL, especially among high school students, and they want to avoid that, even though we try to market ourselves as not really being your high school ESL.
Right. Crystal, is there an admissions process at all for students who come into the program?
Yeah, but it's not really any different from the general college admission process. So if someone's interested in us, we direct them to the place that we would direct anybody, going to our campus welcome center. They get them signed up for the placement test. One thing our college has specialized in for a couple of years now is kind of having a one-stop shop. When you come to RACC, you can get tested or bring your transcript and get into classes the same day, or at least know which level you're going to be in. So our students would go through that same process. And what's happening on a day-to-day basis is Let's say there's a little bit of confusion about the student's placement score. We have an email chain going where advisors are reaching out to us in real time, having us review the writing placement samples, and we're almost case managing that just to make sure we get everyone in the right place. So it's very much an ongoing process. Even now that our regular fall semester has started, we were just answering some of those emails today for students looking to get into our late start semester or maybe starting in the spring. So very, very ongoing, and we're doing it every day.
Right, right. Okay.
And
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to highlight as well. One thing that is newer that has been a really big help is as a result of a Title V grant that we had received a few years ago. The college invested in a position in advising called connection coaches. And those are specifically bilingual connection coaches or advisors. So that has been extremely helpful because for a lot of that admissions type information, when students might be very overwhelmed by the language, and understanding what you're signing up for when you start college is really important. Our students can work with a bilingual English-Spanish connection coach. So that's just another feature of the admissions process that really benefits our students a lot.
Okay. I'm thinking about the student, like you said, that had the stigmas that maybe are attached to it, or those that didn't know about the program, but now I'll say they're an advanced student, maybe they're on track for graduation. Can someone further along, come back into the program later or get services like in the middle of the semester, that's not necessarily a credit course? Crystal?
Yeah, sure. So definitely through our academic literacy and language center, that is a big thing that we do. There's also a couple other offshoot things that we do, not necessarily for advanced students, but we offer a free conversation group. Our budget allows for that. That's more open to the community and maybe our students' friends and family members. So if somebody comes and, it's too late or to get into our non-credit ESL courses and they're not quite ready for credit courses, they can attend that group just to get that comfort level going. If they're a more advanced student in our program, they can come for tutoring, even if it's one time in the middle of the semester, or if it's every week, for 15 weeks, it's here for them. They don't necessarily come back through our classes again because it is credits. There's no need to repeat those credits. But that we're very, very fortunate and to be able to provide that ongoing support to those students through our center.
Right. So in addition to just being in the program in general, Eleisha, you mentioned tutoring. What other type of student support services do you guys provide?
So as faculty, Crystal and I also serve as advisors. And, our program has really blown up this fall in particular. But generally we have about 175 to 200 students in a given semester. And when it comes to advising, that's actually pretty manageable for us. So we try to take on all the advising for our students, conduct outreach, help them get registered for their next semester. And like Crystal said, we have the English conversation group meetings. We have in the past also done some, what did we call them? Like mixers between our non-credit ESL program and our program, where students would come over to our tutoring center. We would provide lunch and we would just let the students mix and talk so that students in non-credit who were maybe unsure if they wanted to transition over to the credit side could talk to our current students, get an idea of what the classes were like, and really just be encouraged that if that's something they decided to do, that they would be fully capable of making that transition and starting their journey to pursue a college degree.
Okay. You were talking about, I think earlier, I wanted to come back to a point you had said a couple of times that EAP is different from ESL. So, and hammering that point to students so that it was more accepting, I guess, to come into the program. So what would you say is the major couple of difference or single difference between the two? Like, how do you differentiate? I'll ask you, Crystal.
Okay, sure.
All right.
The way that I would define it is that ESL is a designator commonly used for English acquisition programs.
Mm-hmm.
So our non-credit ESL program uses that because it's really basic learners getting conversational skills, that foundation set. And then when we were originally also called an ESL program, but as we continued to lead our program, we realized that our emphasis was on academic skills rather than straight language acquisition. So we're not necessarily teaching huge lists of grammar rules and vocabulary lists, though those are certainly integrated into our program.
Right.
We're doing, strategies for composing an essay. We're doing strategies for coping mechanisms while reading difficult academic texts. And so we kind of researched that a little bit and realized that English for academic purposes was more of a better industry standard term for what we did. And I can't remember, Eleisha, what year we changed that name.
I think it's 2020, actually.
2020. So it's been a few years that we switched over to EAP to distinguish ourselves from the ESL program here at our college, but also in general from traditional ESL, which focuses more on that basic language acquisition. Our focus really is on pre-college, getting our students that solid academic foundation to complete those complex skills in their classes.
You mentioned how some of the programs, students are able to bring family and friends with them to it. You have some conversation groups, things like that. So you're preparing some students, obviously to move on in an academic career. Do you have any type of programs to help facilitate for those who are just looking to go get just a job where they don't necessarily need a degree? Do you have that? Any type of resources for that for students that come through or their family members?
So we do have, on the non-credit side, we do have career training programs. We actually have a student this semester. She is from Syria and she started in the non-credit ESL. She transitioned over into our classes. She's in her top level right now. But even when she came into our credit classes, she wasn't really sure what she wanted to do. And it took a lot of meeting and talking about her interests and what is feasible for her as a wife and mother. And she decided that she wanted to pursue one of our non-credit programs to become a pharmacy technician. But again, her emphasis right now is she wants to feel comfortable with the language. She wants to feel more prepared professionally to use English. And so even though she could have pursued that pharmacy tech program without taking our classes, she elected to take our classes first. And then she'll move back to non-credit to pursue that certificate program that's, much shorter and not at the degree level.
Okay. Excellent. So when we think about the Crystal, you're faculty in the program, right?
Yes.
And yourself and the other faculty members, do you guys have to have any type of specialized credentials to do this work? Speak to that.
I'd have to look back at our job description to see exactly what we say. But we are always looking for people with TESOL and ESL credentials. And if not that, at least some kind of pedagogical background. We really believe in the training of teachers, and that training is that teaching is an art and a science that you need to learn, on top of your field or your discipline. So it's definitely a high priority for us. Eleisha and I don't have the official hire and fire power, but our dean allows us to screen all of our candidates to be adjuncts and tutors. And so when we interview them, that's a big focus, is what they've done with ESL students and language learners in the past.
What type of instructional approach, then I'll ask, do you guys use in the classroom? Is it, like blended learning models? Do you use a lot of technology, collaborative learning? Like, what would you say is, if there's one that's most successful, or is it a combination of everything? Or if you could expound on that.
We probably can both answer this. I'd
Mhm.
probably go active learning is our
Mhm.
biggest priority, making sure that students are doing, not just listening in the classroom. A principle that I heard a few years ago and I've always tried to use is doing the I do, we do, you do. So always modeling for students, but always making sure that there's activity involved. And I know all of our teachers are committed to that. As far as modality, most of our courses are face-to-face. We find that our students do much better in a traditional classroom setting. However, we did convert our highest level reading and writing to online formats, just to make sure that we provide that modality to students who want that and can handle it.
Mhm.
Sometimes the success rates might be a little bit lower in those because online is a challenge. It's a unique
Right.
challenge, but we want to make sure to offer that to people who do want that option. But yeah, active learning is what I would say.
Yeah. Alicia, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I would just add that I think sometimes with the active learning, I think faculty can take that too far,
Mm.
and students will come in and just maybe sit down with a laptop or a computer, and the instructor, faculty in the room will say, okay, now do this.
Hmm.
And in our program, our philosophy is very much, guided practice. Like Crystal said, the
Hmm.
scaffolded I do, we do, you do. So there's definitely still some of that traditional lecture in the class, but it's not the entire class period. It might be
Hmm.
a 15-minute chunk, and then let's move on and let's practice what we were just discussing. And that really works for students. We've had students come back to us and say, with other professors in a gen ed class or something, they walk into the room, they sit down, they just immediately have to start working on something, and they feel like they're not really being taught. And our population, they really want to be instructed,
Hmm.
given information, in addition to the opportunity to practice and receive feedback.
Okay. Excellent. Guys, you getting some feedback from students there makes me wonder. Not wonder, but one of the things I did want to ask you guys, if you have some anecdotes on students who've been to the program, who've come and given you feedback and what it's meant for them, and or how it's changed their life, if that's happened. Do you have any stories like that to share?
It happens all the time.
Okay, good, good, good.
Crystal, can you think of anybody specific you
Um,
care about first?
I'll tell the story of Nicole. So Nicole is a student that came to us. Oh, what year was it, Alicia?
2018, maybe
2018.
2017.
And she was in our mid-level, I think is where she tested. And it was always a good student, but was what we would say she was appropriately placed. She was in the right
Hmm.
place for her level at the time. And soon she wanted to get a work study job here on campus. And she was actually, we got a call from another office on campus saying that they didn't think that she was ready to be in their work study position because her English wasn't strong enough. And at that point, we said, ooh, well, we can use her in our program. And we got a work study position for our learning center. And so we
Okay.
employed her there. That gave her the opportunity to grow not only in our courses and her college courses, but through interacting with us and interacting with other students by working with us. And we're just so proud of her. She graduated. She is in psychology. She is currently really almost finishing up her bachelor's degree at Penn State Berks, our local campus. And she's actually working full time in our human resources department here at RACC. And
Oh,
she's often the person we call on if we want a former student to come and talk to a group of newer students or student orientation, because she always says, she asks if she can come back because she loved it so much. And she
okay.
calls it her family, her second family. And that is just one student, but I can't stress enough how that's the story of a lot of our students, is they really feel a sense of community in our program and feel that they find this beautiful second family with our teachers and our tutors and their classmates.
Okay. And you say community, makes me also think about the broader community in Reading. Do you have any local employers or local government that support the program and, maybe want to work with these students once they finish their degrees?
Our program specifically doesn't really have those connections, because we're really just kind of like a handoff point, when students come through us, we're saying, okay, you're ready, you're going to go on into your major and, get ready for more rigorous, challenging classes. And we're going to be here to support you the whole time, but you're not really ours anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, we don't personally work with any local organizations or jobs or anything, because when the students are with us, they're just starting out. But one of the things that our application with Examples of Excelencia allowed us to do was, really just pull a lot of data and look at things that maybe we hadn't really looked at before. One of the things that we did recently learn is once students are in their first college level, measured from that point, our
Mm-hmm.
students are graduating at the same rate as everybody else at the college. So, if they came through our program and they're starting at their English composition, their gen ed classes, they have the same chance, same rate of graduation as everybody else. And we have seen our students go on, and we have so many students who went through our nursing program and
Mm-hmm.
passed their NCLEX, and they're working in local hospitals now. We have students who transferred to four-year universities and are now teaching in Reading School District. We have a couple students that have gone off to medical school.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we don't really partner with local employers or organizations or anything, we are keeping tabs on where our students go, what they're doing, and seeing how successful they are even beyond our campus.
Excellent, excellent. So for those in the audience who are thinking about setting up something similar at their institution, what would you guys say was the biggest challenge you guys had, either early on or even that's continuing today? Crystal, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
You had that.
Trying to think challenge. I would say destigmatizing a lot
Hmm.
is the
Mm-hmm.
challenge. That's the biggest one, I think. And the way that you destigmatize is through the personal conversations you have with students. So what Eleisha has done, and I've participated when I can, is we've had training with our advisors on how to talk with students who might be language learners, understanding that it's okay to ask questions about whether English is their first language or whether they're more comfortable in another language. And then getting them to understand that we've specifically designed our program so that it does not delay them in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Our program it functions as a developmental program, even though not all of our students are developmental, and just knowing that it's parallel. So whether they go into the mainstream developmental or our program, there's no slower pathway that they're being put on because they're a language learner. So
Okay.
the destigmatization, I think, is a big one, and just understanding and communicating to students that their bilingualism, their multilingualism is an asset and not a
Yes.
deficit, and making sure that the people who work with them, the staff and the faculty, believe that as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like, really just giving them a lot of respect
Absolutely.
is important there. Okay. Well, hey guys, coming towards the end here, so I want to thank you both for your time. If you have any parting words you want to share, I'll say speak now, forever hold your peace. Anything. Anything else you want the world to know about? Now that I know your vernacular, I'll say RACC as opposed to Reading Area Community College. Yeah.
I'll just add, because you mentioned earlier, Excellencia is data driven, it's evidence based, and going along with what Crystal said about the destigmatization. One thing that we're so excited about sharing within RACC and beyond, once we're announced as the example, is just how successful our students are beyond our program, because faculty don't always even know, like Crystal said earlier, they don't even always know when they have these multilingual learners of English in their classrooms. And typically when they are aware of it, it might be because the student is really struggling. And so that's when I hear about it. That's when I'll have a colleague come to me and say, this student's really struggling, what can I do to support them? Or, how did they do in your classes? Was it like this when they were with you? So I'm really excited to share our data. And so two of the points that I want to share are related to our students' success rates in freshman English composition. So their writing course, our students who complete EAP, they pass that freshman composition class at a rate 6 percentage points higher than the general population. And RACC also has courses deemed barrier courses. So these are general education classes. They're high enrollment, but low success. And students who completed EAP successfully complete those classes at an average rate of 9.2 percentage points higher than the general population. So I am just very excited for our campus community to know that, and for students to see that as well, to know that this isn't a place for them to be stigmatized. It's a place for them to get the support they need to move on and outperform all their peers.
Awesome. For the audience who want to know more about the other examples, they can go to excelencia.org and read about the other examples. Would you guys like to share how people can get in contact with you or find out more about the EAP program through RACC directly?
Sure. So racc.edu, and you can search for English for Academic Purposes or EAP in the search bar. We have a Facebook page, which is English for Academic Purposes at Reading Area Community College. Reading is spelled like the word reading. And we also are on Instagram. It's RACC_EAP_program.
Okay. All right. Thank you guys very much. Last question. Now, I understand Reading is also known for good pretzels. So who has better pretzels, Reading or Philadelphia?
Oh, well, see, I would draw a line and say Reading has better hard pretzels that come out of
the
the
hard
bag,
pretzels.
and Philadelphia has better soft pretzels. We know our pretzels around here.
It's a good political answer. I like that. All right. All right. Well, again, thank you guys very much.